Fantastic. Well, why don't we go ahead and begin? It's about 6 o'clock, and I know that time is precious. There are many activities on campus happening, and our students are busy with school, so we want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Whether you are joining in person, online, or watching this recording at another date, we just want to thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight as we launch this exciting new year with your seniors. Tonight, we are going to begin with introductions, highlight our philosophy and vision for our office. Move that. There we go. The philosophy and vision for our office, share with you some new programming, how it benefits your students, tell you about what we're accomplishing in senior advisory, guide you through some Naviance tools that can really help you and your students when it comes to college research. We will review our fall timeline as well as to-dos and reminders, often offer advice when it comes to standardized testing, and suggest some additional resources to help you in this journey. So that's our agenda for the evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Melissa Lustig. I am Director of College Counseling. This is my third year at the Meadows, and I work specifically with families' last names M through Z. I spent 6 years as college counselor at Aspen High School in Aspen, Colorado, and before that, I worked in college admissions for 12 years. With the retirement of Mr. Michael Hallman, we have a new team member, Barbara Stewart, who joined us in July. In fact, she's so passionate about the work that we do. She actually joined us for our June Bootcamp, which was a new initiative for us in June. And that was like a month before her actual start date. So the students were able to be introduced, get to know her, and you'll be learning more about her tonight. Mrs. Stewart has a master's degree in counseling, college counseling certification from UCLA. She brings to us a wealth of knowledge and experience with 15 years of college counseling experience, both at Bishop Gorman and at Franklin Road Academy in Nashville, which is very similar to the Meadows. She has read applications for New York University, so she understands the world of highly selective college admissions. She has been an incredible asset already to our office, and the transition has been really quite seamless. So our philosophy, it's important for us, first of all, to acknowledge that every student's journey is unique, is different, is distinctive in and of itself onto them. And it can't be compared with what every other student is doing, what any other student is doing. Every student travels their own path, their own timeline, and on their own pace, which is why it's so important for us to personalize our counseling accordingly. We are student-centered. Our counseling is based on developing a relationship with your students, answering questions through one-on-one conversations, understanding your family's story, discussing concerns, and really connecting with our students. As our head of school, for those of you who went to our head of school's coffee yesterday, this won't come as a surprise to you. The theme this year is about connection. And we seek to build connections with our students to better understand their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, and help fulfill their goals for their future. Students as educated, we are teaching students to be educated and informed consumers, to collect data and to research a variety of sources to better understand the nuances and the attributes and the distinctive qualities and the value of different institutions and all the different options that exist out there. There are approximately 5,300 colleges and universities in the United States. So we want to expand our students' knowledge of what's out there. We want our students to reflect on who they are, on what they're looking for in a college, so that when we meet and we talk with them, especially about their list, they can articulate what it is about each institution that resonates with them, that they're looking for, why they are applying to specific institutions, and how those schools fit their needs. We're really excited as well because we've expanded advisory this year, and we'll begin incorporating college research, college knowledge earlier, starting in 9th grade. So this won't be so much of a surprise to them when they start junior year. We want to facilitate building a balanced college list. And what do I mean by balanced? We talk about that term a lot. What exactly does that mean? In our world, when we talk about balance, we're talking about admissions selectivity. We want to ensure that all of our students, when they are applying to colleges, that they have foundation schools, that they have target schools, and they have reach schools on their list. So that come springtime, right, they have choices that they're excited about. So foundation schools, where a student is based on admissions data, quantitative information that is available to us from the colleges, from Naviance, which you will see, that a student is above that profile of averages of the mid 50%. And they are confident, and we are confident, that they will be admitted. Those are our foundation schools. And in my experience, the most challenging aspect of college research is discovering those foundation schools that offer you the academic, social, extracurricular, career, and financial needs and attributes that you're looking for, and you're excited about them. And you know you can get in. You're confident. We're confident based on the data that you will be admitted. The target schools, where you're about in the mid 50%, right? You will fall right within their averages. It's not a foundation school, but it's not a reach school either, right? You can go either way. And the reach schools, right? The schools that so many students have heard about, they may aspire to, but that can, for one reason or another, they can pick and choose. They can craft their class, as we call it in the world of admissions, craft their class based on what they're looking for in any particular year. And it varies from year to year. And we're going to talk about that. So we want to make sure that our students are being realistic in assessing their chances for admission. And this comes down to conducting research about the admission selectivity at each institution. It's also really important to know your priorities as a family. So for example, if you are a student whose family, you've had this conversation, and you're a family that financial need is going to be a factor in your college decision, then perhaps we would like to suggest that you apply to more foundation schools where you're above their profile. And as a result of that, they're more likely to offer you merit scholarships. So we can tailor the list to each individual student and their needs, their programs that they're aspiring to, and their journey. So it really is about a conversation and a dialogue with your student, with you as a family. And that brings me to parents as partners. You are our partners. While we empower our students to take ownership of this process, right, of their futures, our students look to you for support, for encouragement through this complex and ever-changing journey. It's really important to us that we meet with you, that we understand your values and your priorities as a family, especially when we're helping your students craft their lists, and communicating their stories through their essays as well. Your voice is really important to us, and I want you to know that. Your education of the college Application and admissions landscape and process is also important to us. And while students have advisory, our students have advisory to educate them about the ins and outs of the world of college counseling, college admissions, and to work on their applications. These programs like tonight, for example, serve as your curriculum. This is our parent curriculum right here. And it's really crucial for us to have well-informed parents who have to ensure you have accurate information to understand our philosophy and where we're coming from. And to open those channels of dialogue. Our vision: to guide students in discovering the best fit for their academic, cultural, and financial needs. Ensuring that each student doesn't just survive, but thrives in their life beyond the Meadows School. So what does that mean when it comes to fit, when it comes to fit for their academic needs? So for those who might know what they want to study, for example, does the school offer you the program that you're interested in, the curriculum that you're looking for, the major that you're seeking? What if you change your mind, perhaps? Does it offer you enough alternatives that you're going to be satisfied and fulfilled at the institution? If you're still exploring, which many of our students are, is there a liberal arts curriculum to give you the chance to explore different fields of study? So academic fit, right? So how are the classes taught? How do you like to learn? Do you prefer discussion-based classes? Do you prefer lecture-style auditorium classes? What's going to engage you as a student and promote your learning as your critical thinking, your engagement, and what kind of curriculum are you going to really enjoy? The student-faculty interaction, is that important to you or not? Do you care about study abroad? Do you care about research? Do you care about accessibility to faculty? These are all questions that we want our students to consider when it comes to the academic fit, right? Cultural, right? And cultural, I think of as so much of it really is, it encompasses everything from extracurriculars and social life, right? The nuances and the ethos of an institution, whether a school is collaborative, right? Whether there's a sense of community, whether there's a sense of mentorship and accessibility and friendliness, if there's a sense of competitiveness, if there's a sense of drive and pre-professionalism, or are they students who love learning for the sake of learning? What are their priorities, right? And none of it, I'm not saying one is better than another, but every school has its own vibe, right? And every school has its unique community as well. So oftentimes this comes down to, and this is why we often encourage our students and our families to go visit colleges if you possibly can, when it is safe to do so, because sometimes that instinctive gut reaction, right, when you step on a college campus, will resonate with you, and you'll feel that sense of personality and connection with an institution. So I often say, one of the things to ask yourself when you're on a college campus is, can I picture myself here? Are these my people? Or will I be able to find my niche here? And chances are, in many cases, you will. You will. Financial needs. This is for some of our families, the elephant in the room, which is the awkward, uncomfortable, sometimes conversation about what your family can afford, how much you've saved, how much you expect your student to contribute to their cost of their education, and what that financial picture looks like at the beginning of this process, at the beginning of their application journey. Because if there's one thing that we want to avoid in particular, it is a student who is admitted, right, to a school that they dream about and they can't afford it. So we encourage our students to have these conversations, these transparent adult conversations about what can our family afford and how that might influence the college application process, and to be able to communicate with us about that as well. Right. That is. Hello. So thank you again for joining us. We realize that it is a sacrifice on your part to take time away from your family to be here, and we are grateful for that. And just, I want to say that I'm so excited to be here. I am working with students whose last names are A through L. I've had a chance to meet with just about all of them. And if you are an A through L parent, I have to say you have very interesting, charming students. And I have just really enjoyed my conversations with them, enjoyed getting to know them, and I feel very fortunate to be able to embark on this journey with them. So if you are an A through L parent, I would say job well done. Very, very nice. But tonight what we want to talk about just briefly is like the boot camp and the advisory program. As Ms. Lustig said earlier, the Bootcamp Program was a new initiative this year. We did it in two parts, we bookended it with the summer. So we started out with the rising seniors in early June. I think it was like June 3rd or June 6th, to give them an idea about the kinds of things that are coming up, the kinds of tasks that would need to be accomplished, and to give them some kind of idea about what they could be working on during the summer. So we went through the timeline with them. We actually had an essay writing workshop with our representative from USC, which was really well received. And we had an opportunity for students to actually get into their Common Apps and do some work on them so that we could answer questions real time before they kind of set forth into the summer and wanted to start navigating the process early on. And then at the end of the summer, we wanted to check in and say, how did your summer go and what kinds of things did you accomplish and where are you in the process? And wherever you are in the process is where we're going to pick up now. And we did things like we rolled over their Common App. We got colleges into their colleges I'm applying to list and that kind of thing. But we also had an absolutely excellent supplemental writing workshop with our Columbia rep. And it was one of the best writing workshops I've ever attended. It was very insightful for our students. So very happy that we were able to provide that. And then in addition to that, we had a program or an activity where we had 6 applications, 6 students applying to various schools for themselves. So each student stood alone. And we actually had these are real students from real places living real lives. And we had their essays and their academic profiles. We had their activities and their test scores. We had the application packet. We had a list of the schools that they applied to. So we had our students break into small groups, and they functioned as the admission committee. So they were able to look at this information. They were able to process it together. And then together in their small groups, they had to decide if a student would be admitted, denied, or waitlisted. And then we gave them some data points from the colleges that they were applying to help them with that task. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So six different applications or 6 different student profiles, probably a total of 50 colleges across all 6 of those. And then at the end of the exercise, we were able to go through, because we actually had the admission results for each of those students. We could tell them in real time, in real life, what actually happened to those students. So they could see, how did they do as functioning as that admission committee? And they could see what happens to their application once they hit the submit button, right? It's kind of mysterious, right? You put all of your energy into building this application profile, and we send off all of your documentation.
5:56，刚才你转过来那个Access Light， 就是那个长荣。我这张照片就是我现在看到的 PDF， 没有签名，没有
So they had an opportunity to function as the admission committee. And what they learned was it's not cut and dried. It's a fairly subjective process. So each group came up with their own decisions, admit, deny, or wait list, and our groups did not agree. So it's a little snapshot about what happens in admission committees when they're actually at the universities going through all of our student files, to know that, you know, on the one hand, you might have somebody advocating for your student, and on the other hand, you might have somebody who's advocating for another student. And so, you know, there's a lot of really good discussion that takes place there. And we're going to talk a little bit in a minute about what those data points are that colleges are looking at and that kind of thing, to show you what other information they had when they completed the exercise. And then the other thing I want to touch on just briefly is senior advisory. Ms. Lustig has done an amazing job putting together the curriculum for the junior advisory and for the senior advisory. There's videos where she's pulled in representatives from different colleges, where she's pulled in student panels. She's created exercises to help our students move through the application process and in small little bites. So as advisory progressed through the year last year, students were able to actually complete pieces of the application in advisory. They actually had time to complete it in advisory. And we're continuing with that this year so that students have time. This week, they were working on their essays, their personal essays. Last week, they were working on their teacher recommendations. So for students who are really engaging in their advisory time, they actually can produce results that are submissible to colleges. And it's one last test that they have to do at night. So if you're a student, I would encourage you just to continue using your advisory time wisely. And if you're a parent, I would encourage you to check in with your students to see, you know, what kinds of tasks are we working on in advisory today as we're moving through the college application process. Go this way. So one of the things that we want to focus on just for a few minutes tonight is Naviance. So Naviance is a web-based program that is used by schools across the country, and it's used by colleges across the country as a data management system. So there's two sides to it. There's our side to it. We use it for helping students to manage the actual application process. We upload our letters of recommendation. We send transcripts. We do all of the paperwork through Naviance. And then there's the student side of it. And the students have a remarkable array of tools at their disposal. And I'm going to walk you through some of those tools briefly. But I wanted to just let you know, if you didn't see it already, we sent an email to each of you with Naviance login information. So you can actually go in and establish a Naviance account for yourself. We sent you the directions on how to do that and the code. And when you do that, what you're actually doing is you're going to link up with your student's Naviance account. So you can actually go in and see what schools does your student have on the list of schools that he's applying to? Has he taken any of the career assessments? What kinds of things are going on kind of in his world? And then you can also, so you can see it, but you can't change it. Like you can't add a school to the list. You can't do the assessments if you want to. And then some of the assessments are really interesting. So sorry about that. But it's a pretty interesting program, and there's a lot of depth to it if you take the time to actually look at it. You can research colleges, and I'm going to show you how to do that tonight. You can research careers, where you can take an assessment that's based on the Myers-Briggs. If you're familiar with that, the theory is there's 16 personality types, and everyone falls under one of those types. If you're the same type, it doesn't mean you're the same person. It just means that you perceive the world the same way. And then what it does with that is then it actually, based on your type, if you read the profile and you feel like that kind of matches who you are or how you perceive things, you can actually see a list of careers of people who are also perceiving the world the same way you are. You can see what careers that they've really enjoyed. And I think this is interesting because so many of our students are undecided in terms of which path they want to take. So once if they're looking at a list of careers that they think they might want to explore, you can click on that career. It will take you to an in-depth look at what that career looks like. What skills do you need? What education do you need? What will you do in the day-to-day? How much money will you earn? If that looks interesting, you can click on that, and it's going to take you to the majors that you can look at in order to get to that career. And if you click on the major, it actually will take you to colleges that offer that major. So it's pretty robust in terms of what it offers.
But actually, that's not what I wanted to talk about tonight. So that's just kind of like a brief overview. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into a student account. So you'll actually be able to see what your students can do and what you can do as well. Okay, so when you log into your account, or when your students log into the account, this is what you see. And this is your homepage. Self-discovery gives you a list of the different opportunities for assessments. The personality assessment is the one I was just talking about. You can do some career research. You can do college research, and we're going to do a little bit of that. You can see who's coming to visit us and when they're coming, all that kind of stuff. But we're going to start with the home button. And we're going to type in, you can do this with any school. So tonight, we're going to look at George Washington University. So when you type in the school, you have to spell it correctly. Some programs are forgiving, some are not. This one's not. So you're going to click on the school. You can do this for any college. So this is actually just an amazing wealth of information. The page is going to come up. And you're going to get this bar. It's going to give you some kind of interesting information. It's going to give you the average net price based on your income. So you can see you can change the income. It's going to give you the graduation rate for a 4 years, 72%. For 6 years, it's at 79. It gives you an acceptance rate. Last year, it's always current data. So last year, it admitted 41% of the students who applied. They give you an idea of the other schools that students who applied to GW, where they applied. So it can kind of spark some interest on your side. But what I want to go back to is the 41% admit rate. So that's pretty good, right? So that means that out of every 100 students, 41 students were admitted. So I feel like that's a pretty encouraging number. GW is an excellent school. As we scroll down, we're going to show you, I think most of us would agree that knowledge is power, right? And I feel like in this process, sometimes students feel like they don't have any power, right? They're just kind of picking schools and they're hoping, that it's going to work out. And what we want to do is give you the knowledge to give you a pretty good idea about how that's going to work out when we're talking about the majority of schools in the country, right? So GW would be one of those schools, a 41% admit rate, pretty solid. So when they're giving you the middle 50% information, this is information where you can actually put yourself into context, right? So here you can see with the GPA, they're not giving you a GPA. Some schools will include it, some schools won't. You always have to take that piece of information with a grain of salt because every school reserves the right to calculate your GPA the way they want to. So they can unweight it, they can take your unweighted, they can take your weighted as it is on your transcript, or they can take your grades and put it into their own system and weight it according to how they want to weight it because they want to weight everybody the same. So they want to level the playing field. We don't know how colleges do it. Every college reserves the right to do whatever they like. Sometimes they're transparent about it and sometimes they're not. So that's, it's data like we know here when we're looking here, your high school's middle 50% of acceptance. We know that our students who have applied to GW, pretty solid in terms of GPA, but we don't know what that looks like compared to the national average. So if we look at the SAT, this is the national, the green. They're saying the SAT, the middle 50% of all the students who were admitted last year, their SAT range was a 1200 to a 1390, and their ACT was a 29 to a 32. So if you've taken some standardized testing and you've got your scores back, you now have information that can help you put yourself into context as it relates to what the admission decision might look like, right? So if your ACT is sitting at a 33 or a 34, you're in the top 75%, you're in the top 75%. So your chances of being admitted are really, really strong, right? If you're sitting in the 29 to 32, your chances of being admitted are really strong, pretty good. If you're sitting below a 29, I'm just using ACT as a reference. If you're sitting at below a 29 at a 22, that's going to be a reach school for you, right? So now when we're talking about adding schools to your list that are reach, target, or foundational, you can kind of see how you can actually come up with some data that can help you actually do that. So again, Ms. Lustig was talking about how if you're in this range, if you're in the top, the top 25%, opportunity for some scholarship money, which is great. If you're in the middle 50%, strong possibility of admission. And if you're in the bottom 25%, doesn't mean you won't be admitted. We don't know what they're looking for. Every school has something that they call institutional priorities. And so if you happen to fall into something that they're looking for and you're not hitting that middle 50%, it could be, that could be, where your entry is. And it could be something like, I like to use the example of which students own elephants, right? That's how random it is in terms of what institutional priorities can be. Institutional priorities come down to admissions offices. Every school is different, from the provost and from the development office. And it's up to them to determine what they're looking for. They send that information down to admissions, and now all of a sudden, admissions is looking for students who own elephants, right? So you just kind of have to remember that bottom 25% reach school doesn't mean you shouldn't apply, but you just want to be kind of realistic about that. And you want to make sure when you're building your list, you have more target schools and safety schools than you do reach schools. Because at the end of the day, you want to have a lot of options. You want to make sure that you've done your research, you know where you fit academically into each school on your list, you've got a pretty good idea about where things are headed, and then it kind of lowers the stress. You're not waiting just to see what's going to happen. You've kind of educated yourself to know the probability of what's going to happen, right? So something to think about. Then, I was thinking I was on the slides. The other piece of that, when you scroll back up, you can click on the admissions tab, and this is interesting too. So here, this is applications for the Meadows School over a period of probably 10 years, I'm guessing. So when you arrow over it, like let's look at this guy, the check is accepted. This student had a SAT of a 1470 and a GPA of a 3.86. This student was denied. They had a 1300 and a 3.94. You can see this student was denied at a 1290 and a 4.4. You can see what's happened to students in the past who have applied to GW, whether they've been admitted, denied, or waitlisted. But you do have to take this with a little grain of salt, because if this is representing a 10-year period, admissions 10 years ago for any college is different than what it is today. So it's something that's interesting to look at, but you just always want to remember the caveat. Okay, so I'm going to actually scroll back up here, and I want to talk about, just briefly, the whole idea of highly selective admissions. And for that, I'm going to plug in I'm not in there. Hang on one second. Okay, so not sure what that came up. We're going to search. Okay, again, you're going to go to the search page. You're going to look for, I'm looking for USC because that's the school that I want to take a look at. University of Southern California is here. So let's take a look at the data points. When we're talking about highly selective or most selective, we're talking about schools that have an admit rate of 30% or less. So when you're talking about a school that has an admit rate of 30% or less, it doesn't matter where you fall into the middle 50% grid, it's always going to be a reach school. Because in this case, you can see the acceptance rate for USC last year was 12%. So 12 students out of every 100 were admitted. So that's significantly less than George W., right? So highly selective school falls into the most selective category, and you don't know what's going to happen because you don't know what their institutional priorities are, right? So when you come down here, you can kind of get a little bit of a picture. They're actually giving you a range. They're saying 377 to a 4, but you don't know what that means. Is that unweighted? Is that their weighting? Again, it's not data that you can really decipher or you can really use because we don't really know how they've come up with it. But when you go down to the test scores, you can see national 50%, 1280 to a 1500, middle 50% for ACT was a 30 to a 34. You can see for our students who applied and were admitted, it was a 1400 to a 1520 and 29 to a 33. So again, it just helps to put it into perspective. But when you get into the highly selective schools like a USC, where it's 12 out of every 100 students who are admitted, institutional priorities play a huge role because let's say even if it's just 50% of the students who have applied are admissible because of their test scores, because of their GPA, because of their activities, because of how fabulous they are, they still have to narrow it down significantly. And so they're going to start looking at who owns elephants, right? We don't really know what the priority is going to be. It could be, we just started a major in Swahili, and we're looking for ways to fill the program. It could be we just started a water polo program, and we're looking for players. We don't know. They don't tell us. So I just want to say to students and to parents whose students are applying to some of these highly selective schools, and you're hitting all the marks and you're a solid candidate, it's wonderful. It's great. We have to see what happens, but you can't take it personally if you're not admitted, right? It's not personal. This is a business for them. And so you just want to remember that it doesn't take away from the fabulousness of who your student is. It's just kind of the way highly selective admissions is going today. So just, kind of want to keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to come back here. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lustig to talk about the fall timeline. So when it comes to the next few months, flurry of activity, but be reassured that we are going to do this with your students. We'll be here for them every step of the way. And we're gonna meet their deadlines, and we're gonna have like check-ins on a regular basis with your students to take the pulse, check in, see how they're doing. But the first really piece and component of this, of course, is the meeting. And I'm pleased to say that we have been very busy, and we have already met with most of our seniors for that initial conversation. Everything from how was the summer? Update me, like what were you doing? Did you have any epiphanies? What was meaningful about the time that you were away, or where you were working, traveling, being with family, et cetera. And then really diving into kind of what they're looking for in the college experience, and analyzing and talking about the college list. So we start talking about their list. We start talking about why those particular institutions, what their deadlines are, whether or not strategically it benefits them to apply early versus regular, what the pros and cons are, and kind of giving them context and information about kind of what we see as their strengths, and how they can really help distinguish themselves in their application. One thing that our students did during junior advisory was they filled out many of them, I think, saw this as a great deal of work over a period of time, but it really pays off because we had them do a self-inventory of, when you're agreeing, right, Michelle? Right? It pays off. It was 30 questions. And I guarantee you about 20 of those questions are college admission questions. Everything from tell me about an extracurricular activity that is especially meaningful to you to tell me about an academic interest that inspires you. How would you describe yourself? How would your friends describe you? Tell us about something, the greatest challenge that you faced in your life in the past few years and how it made an impact on you. And it really pushed our students to think, to reflect, to think very deeply about who they were, about their identities, about experiences, about people that have influenced them. And we're able to go back into that information. And I do this on a regular basis in my meetings. I go back and I say, wow, you wrote, when you wrote about
quantum physics, that came up 3 different times in 3 different questions. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, ding, 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 like this is a topic that is especially meaningful to you. If you are talking about it and it comes up multiple occasions for various reasons, this is part of your story. This is important for colleges, for whoever is reading your application to know about you, right? And so by virtue of the students engaging with the work in advisory and being authentic and being honest and being real with us, we can then help them, develop the best application possible to present their best selves and what is distinctive and unique about each student, for example. And that really, really does help our students differentiate themselves in the application process. And I think it also really helps give them an edge when it comes to writing their essays as well. So thinking about those questions, thinking about the application, talking about application progress, where they are, reading their essays, giving them feedback, et cetera, and starting early in that, because the earlier we can start, the less stressful this will be, right? The less work they'll have to do the day before, the week before a deadline, and we're really here to help de-escalate the stress, to make this manageable and to actually make it exciting. And dare I say, this should be an exciting process. This should be a journey that they're looking forward to. Following up with their teachers with recommendations. We encourage our students, don't just assume that your teachers know what your deadlines are. Assume that you still want them to write a recommendation for you. So many of our students all of our students actually were required to ask for one teacher recommendation at the end of junior year. But now is the time when we want them to circle back around to those teachers, right? To articulate why that particular teacher, what they hope that that teacher will communicate in their letter, what they are proud of in that certain course, their accomplishments, their academic contributions, because that really is what the teacher recommendation is all about. And that adds, as colleges move away from more and more standardized testing and become test optional, right? The holistic admissions process, meaning all of the qualitative components, all the anecdotal information, right? The essays, the extracurricular activities, the teacher recommendations play much more of a factor, much more of a role. And it's really important for our students and our teachers do an amazing job of highlighting what a student will contribute to the classroom beyond grades, beyond test scores, beyond just the curriculum of seeing, okay, a student took this class, got an A in this class, but what does that really mean? What are they like in the classroom? And so those recommendations take time. I will tell you that, and Barbara, I'm sure could concur with this, for each recommendation, I spend at least an hour and a half writing that recommendation letter for each student. And oftentimes over a period of several days, as I'm reading and reflecting and sometimes have check-in conversations with the student to try and ensure that it's the most compelling letter, that when a college admissions reader is reading their application, that they're saying, yes, I want this student on my campus. And it resonates, it connects with them, the reader, and they want to fight for my student no matter what. So we want our students to make sure and to know that most colleges expect 2 teacher recommendations, typically from core subject areas. It's especially important if a student is interested in studying a particular area, whether it's medicine or whether it's art, for one of those teachers to be in that particular area of specialization. But we help guide them in selecting their teachers and asking their teachers for their recommendation letters. Updating Naviance and our internal documents, including the parent response form. Thank you so much for offering your insight and your perspective. It's one of the highlights of my year to read your narratives, and I can't wait to learn more about our students through your lens. So thank you. And as just thankfully, so much of what the work that we do now is electronic, but there's still so many pieces and moving parts to the submission process that, we want to make sure that our students understand all the different forms and we have a system of operations that we've communicated to our students. And so, Naviance, making sure that they're familiar with Naviance and they know how to operate it. And we hope that you take advantage of it as well, because it's a very, very interesting tool. Meeting with us to talk about their supplements. I read the supplements, as we communicate to the students, are just as important, if not more important, than the personal statement. And because they're handcrafted by the college, right? They are particular to each school, their values, their vision, their philosophy, or maybe they just want to get the students to think. During the University of Chicago presentation, do any of my students remember what the unique, weird question was that Chicago asked? Yeah. Find X. Exactly. Find X. And they weren't really asking you to solve for X or find X, right? No, it was more about, can you think creatively? Think outside the box. Interpret this question however you want to interpret it, right? It's why one of my favorite questions from University of Chicago, which is kind of the quintessential bizarre question, which is, why did the chicken cross the road? Seriously, and you can go with it in whatever direction you want. They want to see how you think creatively, innovatively, right? And to get inside your mind. So the supplements, one of the hardest supplements that I say to our students and the most time consuming, because it demands that research, is why us? Why our school? Why are you interested in our institution? I read just a phenomenal why us essay today from one of our seniors, but I'd never really read the nuances like this before. Normally, most students will talk about, certain academic programs and maybe the research on campus or the access to internships or research opportunities, right? Collaboration with faculty, what students are doing on campus, the clubs, the organizations, maybe their visit on campus, et cetera. This student was talking about their fight song, that in their fight song, they actually, one of the terms that the fight song uses is hell of an engineer. And he's like, if they're saying hell of an engineer in their fight song multiple times, maybe that's a real focus of this institution. He was talking about some of their traditions. He was talking about the fact that their dorms had 3D printing in all of their common spaces to encourage that, entrepreneurial spirit and sense of innovation. He was talking about how they had a dog therapy program on campus. These are all like details that prove to me that the student has gone above and beyond in researching the institution and is really connected. And of course, he talked about, the academic programs, the engineering programs that he was especially interested in, but it went so much beyond that. And it showed that this was a school that was a great fit for him. And when I'm reading that as an admissions reader, I say, yes, this student wants to be here and has shown me through his research that he has thought about what we offer and how he will fit in, because ultimately it's a two-way street. You're asking yourself and you're doing your research, is this school going to be a good fit for me? And they're asking it at the same time on their side. On September 29th, we have a FAFSA and profile evening presentation starting at 6 p.m. here. And the FAFSA is the financial document that all colleges, private, public, require for consideration for financial need. And we're going to be walking through those forms with you and detailing what information you'll need And the CSS profile as well. That's the form that about 400 institutions, private institutions, require in order to be considered for their institutional aid. So if you think of the FAFSA as the federal government, that's the free application for federal student aid. The profile is the form that private institutions require to determine how much of their piggy bank, their money from that private institution you have qualified for, that based on the financial documents you are eligible to receive. And those documents both open October 1st. So September 29th, we'll be here and we'll be Zooming at the same time. October 2nd, SAT testing. This is for students that have early deadlines, early decision, or early action deadlines that are November 1st. We wanted to highlight this particular date because it is the last date that you can test with enough time to receive your scores and have the scores sent to the colleges for them to be considered for your November application. Because any later than that, if you have a November 1st deadline, that score will not arrive in time for your application to be included in your application to be reviewed. Okay. When it comes to testing, the testing timeline, whether to send scores or not, we encourage you to meet with us, talk with us about it, whether it benefits you based on the data, the averages that we're looking at based on our cumulative history with that institution, whether it will benefit you to send them or whether it might undermine you. And we want to have those conversations with you. And we want to make sure that you're sending them with enough time that they actually are, if you want to send them and you want them to be included, that they're arriving in enough time to be included. October 24th, this is a new program that we're offering as well. Technically, it's open for our sophomores and juniors, but we are inviting our seniors as well, who would like to help us as chaperones. And what it is we've invited colleges, some selective institutions, some popular institutions among our students to come, and similar to what we did with our students at the August Bootcamp, where they read applications, these colleges are going to present on how they would read applications. We already have 11 colleges that have committed to attend. Not bad, considering we're in a global pandemic. They include University of Chicago, Boston College, University of Richmond, Hofstra, GW, University of Puget Sound, University of Denver, Chapman University, University of Redlands, and probably at least one or two others in there. So we encourage your seniors. We would love for them to come and to help our admissions counselors navigate our campus, to make sure that they're settled in their classrooms, in their presentations. We'll have a little mini college fair at the end. And it's really, they're ambassadors. They would be ambassadors. And it's a great way for them to put a face to a name in a more informal context with an admissions counselor. So we encourage you to participate in that, for our students to participate in that. And that's Sunday, October 24th. December 10th, all January 1st applications need to be submitted. So we are closed for winter break, which means that we need time in order for all the materials to be submitted. So we're asking all of our students to ensure that we can make sure that everything's processed accurately, accordingly, on a timely manner, December 10th, for us to have all applications for January 1st submitted. I always like to, and I highly recommend that students, when they're submitting their first application, please submit your first application with us, because we have read hundreds, thousands. I mean, in my 12 years of college admissions, I would say thousands of applications between the two of us, I'm sure. And so there are details to the application that we might pick up One of my favorite examples is, or I wouldn't say favorite, but one of the examples I use is a student who decided to submit his application on his own to the University of Colorado Boulder. And several days later, he came to me and said, Miss Lustig, why are they asking what instrument I play? And we went back into his application, and it turned out he actually submitted his application to the School of Music instead of the School of Arts and Sciences. Fortunately, we were able to remedy that with a quick email to our Boulder representative. This is where relationships really pay off, when I can pick up the phone and say, so Candace, can we change that? But we want to make sure that all the nuances and the details are selected and submitted accurately. So please submit that first application with us, and we can proof it and celebrate with you as well.
So I think Ms. Lustig actually gave you some really good advice on whether or not you should submit your scores. If you've got questions, come and see us. To give you a rule of thumb, if you are solidly in that middle 50% or higher, great, that's what they're looking for. But if you're not in that middle 50%, some students feel that they want to show colleges that they try, right, which is really admirable. But some colleges, not all, some colleges are very numbers driven. And so it can actually hurt them to admit you if your scores are below their middle 50%. So you just want to be really thoughtful about whether or not you're going to submit your scores, and we can help you kind of walk through that process. And to give you an idea, when schools say they're test optional, they are test optional for sure, but the majority of students still do submit scores. So UPenn, 66% of the ED applicants submitted test scores last year, and of that 66%, 75% of those students who submitted test scores were accepted. And then at Georgetown, it's just our other stat of the early action pool, only 7.34% of the applicants who did not submit test scores were admitted. So if they say they're test optional, they are test optional. But if you've got scores that are meeting their criteria, it can be beneficial for you to go ahead and send those. So come and see us if you have any questions. Going the wrong way.
I just got like 2 more slides and then we'll be done. So I want to just introduce and make sure that all of you are familiar with our college counseling website. If you have not been on the college counseling website, it has certainly transformed in the past few years. If you just go to the upper school, we're listed under academics, and the college counseling site, you'll always be able to find the latest video. So this video here will be posted. You can see we did an ins and outs of financial aid last year as well. That is still there. If you want kind of a heads up on financial aid before our October meeting or September meeting. Also, if you want to see admission officers who is visiting our campus, whether virtually or not. For example, today we had Kenyon College and Santa Clara. Tomorrow we have University of Miami visiting as well virtually. Georgia Tech coming up as well. So you can go through and you can say, oh, make sure you sign up for the visit with XYZ institution because they're coming to campus, either virtually or not. And that really can, again, that opportunity to develop a relationship with the admissions counselor, the person that will be reading your application, is invaluable. I cannot emphasize it enough. If you click on financial aid and scholarships, you'll see a list of a plethora of scholarship opportunities, clicking on Nevada and national scholarships that are constantly updated, that students can apply for as well. So that's a great place to start too. So we hope that you will take advantage of the website and just see all the resources that are available here. Okay, so on that note, other resources. Oh, okay. So this guide to colleges, I call this the Green Bible. I don't mean that in a sacrilegious way. I really just mean that this is kind of the quintessential guide that I refer to. It is very student-centered. It is very accurate, based on interviews, based on conversations with faculty, students, administrators. So lots of testimonials, and we find it to be very, very accurate and very easy to read and digest, very comprehensive. And I have literally taken out this book with students before and said, well, what do you know about Lafayette College? What do you know about Lehigh University? Where a student might say, well, I've heard it's a good school, but I don't know much. And we'll start reading it together. And after a while, they'll be like, yeah, you can stop now because I don't think that's a good fit for me, based on what I'm hearing. And then for other students where it's like, yeah, wow, that is me right there. That is everything that I'm looking for. That sounds like, kind of place where I belong. So I definitely recommend the FISC guide. The Princeton Review, note that this is just highlighting the best 300 in their esteemed quote, whatever, the best 385. It's not the best 20. It's not the best 50. These are all exceptional institutions that we want to highlight that I think are worth noting. Colleges That Change Lives by Lauren Pope, who's the former New York Times editor of the education section, 40 schools that no one has ever heard of. I used to work at a Colleges That Change Lives school called Ursinus College outside of Philadelphia, and Ursinus College has the distinction of sending more students to medical school than any other liberal arts college. And these are schools that are transformative, that nurture the students and help them really shine in ways that they might not have anticipated, might not have expected of themselves. And so really allow students to come into their own and really support students' intellectual discovery, intellectual curiosity, and are about the character of a student and nurturing a character. The College Solution is the book I recommend for everybody who wants the Cliff Notes version of admissions and financial aid. Every chapter is probably about a page and a half. It is one of the easiest books to read and probably one of the most informed, comprehensive, well-researched, accurate book. It covers everything from who gets money and why to, bless you, to the nuances of the application process. So I definitely recommend the College Solution. And then College Match is great because it offers some surveys and criteria and thoughtful conversations about ascertaining, is a school a good fit for you or not, and helping you find that fit, which is what we're all about. So I want to conclude with some words of wisdom for you, some quotes that we really refer to, that lead us and that we reference on occasion. College is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. Think about why you're applying to college, why you're going to college. Great educations aren't passive experiences, they're active ones. So much of the college experience is what you make of it, how you take advantage of the opportunities presented to you, the people that you meet, the mindset with which you go in, right? And being an active participant and engaged. The college search is a game of matchmaking, but the main impact will be measured by what you learn about yourself. You'll be pushed as never before to show your accomplishments, clarify your interests, and chart a course for the future. And finally, the best college is one that will challenge you appropriately, open your eyes to new ways of thinking, and help you develop and broaden your talents as you take your place in the world ahead. Thank you so much for being here tonight. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to make a meeting with us, come up to us afterwards. We just want to, again, thank you so much for joining us. Have a good evening.